Americans consume 80 million gallons of olive oil every year.
All right, Starbucks dumping its olive oil-infused coffee.
Olive oil is supposed to be one of the healthiest things you can consume, right?
One Spanish corporation owns Bertolli, Carapelli, and Carbonell. 3 brands sitting in American kitchens, all from the same company. Most people buying them have no idea, and you have no idea of what we are about to expose. UC Davis in California pulled 124 bottles of olive oil from U.S. grocery shelves and tested them. 69% of the imported extra virgin samples failed. Nearly 7 out of 10 bottles. Not a rounding error, not a close call. Failed. This is where your money goes when you think you're buying quality olive oil. And that was before you factor in the rancid oil being chemically stripped and relabeled as something they call pure. Before the seed oils blended in invisibly, legally, and without any disclosure requirement. Before the labeling loophole that lets Spanish oil walk out of a warehouse in Italy and call itself Italian, even saying it with an accent. Here is what we will cover: how this happened, which brands are in the evidence, and the one rule that cuts through this aisle in 10 seconds. You want all the information we have to give you to understand how yet another system is rigged to make sure the consumer never wins. 1. The illusion of choice. You walk into the grocery store, you see Bertolli. A few feet down, Carapelli. On the bottom shelf, Carbonell. One label has an Italian estate painted on it, another has a hand-illustrated olive branch. You assume these are competing companies from different countries competing on quality. That is not what is happening. All 3 of those bottles trace back to one company, D'Olio, a Spanish corporation most Americans have never heard of, despite the fact that it almost certainly stocks their pantry right now. D'Olio is publicly traded and Spain-based. They control Bertolli, Carapelli, Carbonell, Sasso, and Hojiblanca. 3 of the 10 best-selling olive oil brands in the world by volume. Same parent company. Same quarterly earnings report. Here's what should stop you cold. D'Olio owns no significant olive groves. They are not farmers. They are a blending and bottling operation. They purchase bulk oil from over 200 outside suppliers, blend it, label it, and ship it to your store. D'Olio calls this their global sourcing model. The translation: 200 anonymous suppliers, a blending facility, and a label printer. When you pick up Bertolli and set it down in favor of Carapelli because the packaging looks more premium, D'Olio wins either way. You chose between 2 of their labels. The money goes to the same place, and D'Olio is not alone. Filippo Berio is owned by an Italian conglomerate called Salov. The top of the US olive oil shelf is controlled by a handful of companies. Most of them own no significant farming infrastructure. The shelf looks like a marketplace. The olive oil aisle is one company's marketing budget expressed in 3 typefaces, and their competitor's budget expressed in 3 more. But the problem goes further than the named brands. You might be thinking, what about the store brand? The generic? The cheaper bottle at the back of the shelf? Here is where it gets complicated. For mass market imports, the bulk supply pool is shared. Multiple brands draw from the same large tanks, from the same network of anonymous suppliers. Each company formulates their blend differently. The cheap store brand is not just Bertolli in different packaging, but you have no way of knowing who fed that tank or what went into it. For quality domestic producers, the math works the other way. Some California mills sell their same certified oil into store brand deals. A local grocery brand or a co-op label bottled in California might literally be the same oil as the certified brand on the shelf above it, just without the premium markup. The rule holds either way. The label on the outside tells you almost nothing. The certification seal and the origin of the oil are the only things that do. And if you are wondering how badly those seals are needed, we are about to show you. 2. Fraud goes industrial. In December 2025, authorities in Portugal raided an industrial facility. What they found was not a small-scale corner operation. Over 17,000 liters of so-called olive oil, enough to fill roughly 22,000 standard bottles heading to grocery store shelves. Much of it cheap cooking oil, sitting in fake extra virgin containers. Over 1,200 counterfeit labels, pre-printed, stacked, ready to be applied. Here is what the Portuguese food safety inspector actually walked into. Not barrels of oil waiting to be filled. An active production line. Labels already printed, 1,200 of them, sitting in stacks, organized by brand. Bottles already filled, already sealed, ready for the truck. Somebody had a print shop relationship, a bottling schedule, and a customer list. The inspector was not uncovering a crime. They were interrupting a business. The Portuguese Food Safety Authority confirmed 2,425 liters of cooking oil, packaged fraudulently as extra virgin. An additional 14,920 liters flagged for serious labeling violations. This is not not a fringe case. It is the documented infrastructure of an industrial-scale fraud that has been running for decades. North America is not a spectator. Between April 2023 and March 2024, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency tested 92 olive oil samples. 22 failed. Either somebody had blended in cheaper oil or the label claimed extra virgin when the oil wasn't. 1 in 4 on Canadian grocery shelves. Tested and documented. Tom Mueller spent years inside the global olive oil trade, researching his book Extra Virginity. What he found was not a rogue operation. It was a structural feature, fraud baked into the supply chain at multiple points, in enough volume to affect the mainstream market. The 2025 Food Fraud Vulnerability Index named olive oil as one of the most fraud-exposed food categories in the world. High value, nearly impossible to distinguish visually, a global supply chain that gives fraudsters dozens of entry points before the bottle is sealed. The raids happen in Europe. The distribution network does not stop at the border, and the technique they use to make degraded oil look like something you would trust, it has been hiding in plain sight on the label the whole time. 3. The deodorization trap. Rancid olive oil has a smell, a specific one, somewhere between old crayons and stale wax. If a rancid bottle landed on your shelf, you would know it the moment the cap came off. So here's what they do. They heat the oil to between 200 and 240 degrees Celsius. That is between roughly 400 and 465 degrees Fahrenheit. Under vacuum. They run steam through it. The smell disappears. The off flavors disappear. What comes out pours the same, looks the same, and smells like almost nothing. They bottle it. They call it pure olive oil. They really do. That word is on the label in actual ink. Pure and light are not quality descriptions. Under international classification, they are legal categories for refined oil, processed oil, oil that failed to qualify as extra virgin. Light refers to color and flavor intensity, not calories, not health benefits, not how it was made. Both are legal destinations for oil that went through that steam treatment to become sellable. What the process strips out? The volatile aromatic compounds that give high-quality olive oil its grassy, peppery, fruity character. Gone. And the polyphenols? The specific compounds responsible for olive oil's health reputation, significantly reduced by the heat. Standard chemical tests miss deodorized oil. It looks clean. The University of California, Davis developed advanced chemical markers, 2 compounds that only form when oil has been heat treated, that reveal what basic testing cannot. For the record, deodorization equipment is marketed openly at industry trade shows. The promotional materials describe how producers can remove unwanted flavors from lower quality oil and bring it to market. None of this is secret. This equipment is sold in the open. The only thing missing is the label telling you it happened. If nobody told you any of this before, subscribe. Because we are 3 layers deep and we haven't reached your kitchen yet. 4. The blending mechanic. There is an oil that is tasteless, colorless, completely odorless once it is inside that dark green bottle. You cannot smell it, you cannot taste it, and the label is not required to tell you it is there. European food inspectors have documented refined seed oils blended into extra virgin containers in prosecuted fraud cases across multiple countries. The main adulterants are sunflower and soybean oil, and in some documented cases hazelnut oil, chosen specifically because its chemical makeup is similar enough to olive oil that basic tests struggle to catch it. The adulterant is invisible, the markup is real. In 2023, Czech food inspectors pulled olive oil samples from their own market shelves. 67% failed authenticity standards, more than 2 out of every 3 bottles. The Portugal raid was not an outlier. It was a data point in a pattern. You drizzle what you think is a peppery Tuscan extra virgin on your salad. In reality, it is a blend of anonymous seed oils and bulk imports wearing an Italian flag. Same color, same thickness. 0 difference you can detect at home. Then there is the origin game. European labeling rules allow the country where bottling occurred to appear prominently on the front of the bottle. Packed in Italy is a legal statement about where the oil was bottled. The olives could have come from Spain, Tunisia, Greece, or Morocco. Somewhere on the back, in small print, it might say, blend of EU and non-EU olive oils. That is the entire legal disclosure. You paid an Italian heritage premium for a logistics address. The disclosure rules exist. The enforcement capacity to verify every shipment does not. European regulators report dozens of olive oil fraud investigations annually involving both adulteration and origin mislabeling. This is not a rare outcome. It is a recurring enforcement pattern across multiple countries and multiple years. In 2010, a lab in California decided to test exactly what was on American shelves. The results were not pretty. 5. The UC Davis test. If you have ever opened a bottle of Bertolli or Filippo Berio and thought it tasted flat, less grassy, less peppery, somehow thinner than you expected, you were not imagining things. That note of disappointment you filed away as "maybe my taste is off" had a cause. A lab confirmed it. A team at the University of California, Davis pulled 124 bottles of olive oil straight off U.S. grocery store shelves. Imported brands and California brands, all labeled extra virgin. They ran standard testing and advanced chemical analysis. The advanced markers were developed specifically because standard tests were missing degraded oils. The industry's own testing was letting fraud slip through. 69% of the imported samples failed to meet the standard on their own label. The findings named brands. Bertolli and Filippo Berio were on the list. The results were published. The chefs who cook with olive oil professionally had already noticed. America's Test Kitchen ran their own independent blind evaluation of top-selling imported brands. Their trained tasters found what they described as flat, musty, or rancid notes across most of the leading imports. The California producers they tested did not deliver those notes. Same aisle, different result. UC Davis published the data. The International Olive Council, the global industry body that sets olive oil standards, filed a formal objection. D'Olio, the parent company of Bertolli, stated their products fully comply with international standards. The bottles stayed on shelves. The labels did not change. The prices went up. Here's the number that tells the whole story. California produced extra virgin oils in the same study failed at approximately 10%, 10 versus 69. The domestic supply chain is shorter, colder, and more regulated. That's not my opinion. It's in the published research. Now, if the oil in your bottle was degraded, blended, or processed, the next thing you need to understand is what that actually costs you, not in dollars, in your health. 6. The health claim inversion. Your doctor told you to switch to olive oil. They read the research. They meant the polyphenols, the natural compounds in olive oil, responsible for its cardiovascular and anti-inflammatory benefits. You know that peppery burn you sometimes feel in the back of your throat when you taste a genuinely fresh extra virgin olive oil? That is polyphenols. That specific physical sensation is what the research was measuring. It is also what deodorization removes. UC Davis researcher Selena Wong spent years documenting the gap between what clinical studies were measuring and what American consumers were actually buying. Her finding: the average extra virgin olive oil on a U.S. supermarket shelf does not resemble the oil used in those studies. High-quality extra virgin olive oil can contain several hundred milligrams of protective compounds per kilogram. Refined and deodorized oils can drop below 50 milligrams per kilogram, a reduction of over 80%. To put that plainly, a refined olive oil can deliver as little as 1/5 the protective compounds of a quality extra virgin. You are paying for one thing, you are getting another. If the oil in your bottle went through that process, your doctor's recommendation does not apply to it. You have been following medical advice with a product that cannot execute it. The monounsaturated fat in olive oil, oleic acid, survives most refining. It is still present in pure and light categories, but oleic acid alone cannot deliver those cardiovascular benefits. The research that established them used polyphenol-rich oil, not refined oil. You paid an extra virgin price, you got a refined oil product, and your doctor has no idea. 7. The trusted alternatives. There are 3 options where the certification body, the production process, and the ownership structure all pull toward you, not away from you. Your cardiologist would approve of all 3. One of them is from Cashcow, and in independent testing, it beats most of the premium Italian imports you just heard about. The first is California Olive Ranch, certified by the California Olive Oil Council, a voluntary third-party program requiring both chemical testing and expert sensory evaluation to qualify as extra virgin. Voluntary means the brand chose to be tested. Brands that pass and don't carry the seal chose to skip it. Those are different brands. Domestic production means a dramatically shorter supply chain, less time in transit, and fewer opportunities for something to quietly become something else. In UC Davis comparative work, California producers failed at 1/10 the rate of imports. California Olive Ranch has consistently been among them. The second is Kirkland Signature, specifically the California Olive Oil Council Certified Extra Virgin, Costco's house label. Independent labs and food publications have repeatedly found it outperforming many premium Italian imports at a fraction of the price. One rule: verify the bottle carries the COOC seal. Not all Kirkland olive oil products carry it. The seal is the differentiator, not the label. The third is Lucini Italia. Single estate production means the oil in that bottle came from one grove, one pressing, one mill. They put a batch code on every bottle. You can trace that specific oil back to the harvest date and the farm. There is no blend of 200 suppliers. There is one source. That is the structural difference. The chefs who cook with olive oil every day, who actually notice what it tastes like and what it does in the pan, have been buying California domestic and Italian oil from a single estate, one farm, one pressing, one traceable source for years. They are not loyal to Bertolli. They are loyal to results. Now you have the same list. 8. The label tutorial. You could spend an afternoon reading about olive oil fraud and still walk out of the store with the wrong bottle. Or you could use one rule that takes 10 seconds and filters most of this aisle in a single pass. Rule 1. Buy California first. California olive oil faces stricter oversight, shorter supply chains, and dramatically lower fraud rates than imported alternatives. In UC Davis testing, it failed at 1/10 the rate of imports. Not 200 anonymous suppliers and a label printer, a domestic supply chain with skin in the game. Rule 2. Look for the California Olive Oil Council seal. The certification requires passing both chemical and sensory testing by independent evaluators. Brands that carry it chose to be tested. That choice matters. Rule 3. Find the harvest date, not the best buy date. Most mass-market olive oil shows only a best buy date, often 2 or more years out. This tells you nothing about when the olives were pressed. Olive oil quality and its protective compounds degrade significantly within 12 to 18 months of harvest. If the harvest date says 2024 and you are buying it in 2026, that oil is past its peak. No harvest date on the bottle means the producer chose not to tell you when the oil was made. That is information worth having. Rule 4. Read packed in Italy correctly. It is a logistics fact. It means the oil was bottled in Italy. It does not mean the oil was grown in Italy, pressed in Italy, or has any meaningful connection to Italian quality standards. The origin of the oil itself is what matters, and it is almost always buried in the fine print. 4 rules, 10 seconds each. That is the whole aisle. The olive oil industry built a brand out of Mediterranean heritage, ancient groves, and health research that millions of people trust with their grocery dollars. Then it quietly built a supply chain designed to harvest that trust while cutting the product the brand was built on. The most expensive olive oil in the aisle is the one that removed the reason you bought it. Check for the seal. Find the harvest date. Buy California when you can. And if the brand on your shelf just appeared in this video for the wrong reasons, now you know why. If this investigation changed how you shop, hit subscribe. There is more ahead.